that ensure that employees will match the values that they stand for. Okay. So, and there are many ways in which they do that. They take care of the process of selection, the process of hiring, so that, the right kind of people are hired into the organization. But I think in people to organization match, the biggest source of culture is the founder himself or herself. Okay. Every person who founds an organization has a set of values, and these values shape the way the organization looks over time, right? So that is very important. The if and please remember, if there is a change in leadership, if there is a change in founders, then the entire value system of the company undergoes a change. Okay, you will find that in today's case presentation as well. I hope the group is able to appreciate that and bring it out. Okay, now moving ahead, the next source of culture is called as property rights. Okay, this is a very important area, and every property right gives a message to the employees. Okay, so what are property rights? Property rights are the rights that an organization gives its members to receive and use organizational resources. So, for example, organizational resources can be many. Okay, but not all members in an organization have the right or the authority to use those resources. So, if there is a right, there is a authority given to you, then that is called as a property right. Okay, so let us say my organization has parking spaces, and I have the right to use those parking spaces as an employee. Then that is a property right because that is the resource of the organization, and the organization gives me the right to utilize this resource, right? So, to give you examples of property rights, what can they be? Like for stakeholders and top management, what kind of property rights do they have? They have stock options, they have large salaries, and they participate in decision making. But employees too have property rights. And what are those property rights? Severance pays, lifetime employment pension and benefits, employee stock option plans, and participation in decision making. Okay. Now, you can find that from these 2 points, there is one thing that is common, that is ESOPs. Okay. Employee stock option plans, right? These are also called as equity or ownership rights. Ownership rights. Ownership rights. Okay. Ownership rights. Now, many companies in the world are listed on the stock exchange, but they don't give these ownership rights to their employees, right? So there are certain category of companies which do this, which grant these equity rights, and you will very often find that ESOPs have not only been used to reward employees, they've also been used to retain employees. So it depends on what the perspective or what the value of the company is in using these property rights, right? Now, there is something called as severance pay. Are you aware of what this is?
No, ma'am.
Anyone? Anyone in the class at all? Severance pay is a pay which is granted to employees when they are terminated from the company. Okay. So you may think that, when people are asked to leave, they don't get anything from the company. That's not right. Sever. What is the meaning of the word sever? Sever means not severe. Sever means cut. Okay. So, when a employee is cut off from the company, what kind of rights does the employee have? मानो कि कोविड के टाइम में there were companies which went under. Okay, they were not able to do business, so consequence was they were not able to keep those employees. So उन employees का, even if there is no fault with the employee was asked to leave. So that leaving employee, that terminated employee, does he have any rights? Okay, or he or she has any rights? One right or one benefit is called as the severance pay. Okay, severance pays have been very controversial over the years also. What amount of money do you give as a severance pay package? That amount has ranged from $4 million to, 3 weeks or 3 months or 2 months or 1 month ka pay. Okay, so that, and please remember, when we're talking of severance pay, lifetime employment, pension and benefits, these fall in the category of benefits. Okay. Whereas when you are looking at ESOPs, stock options, they are equity rights which fall in the category of variable pay. Okay. Now, I don't know whether you understand the difference between, these property rights, but I will try to, explain to you in a simplistic way. Please follow me. And this is also important for you. We should tell you that how in the next year you should be looking at your salary slip. Okay. Now, supposing total compensation is like a pie chart. Total compensation is like a pie chart. आपको मालूम है इस pie chart के कितने divisions है? There are three divisions to this pie chart. What is the first? The first is called as fixed. What is the second? The second is called as variable. Okay. What is the third? The third is called as benefits. Okay. Now, तीनों के बीच का difference क्या है? The first, which is fixed, is the salary that goes into the pocket of an employee because he or she is a bona fide employee of a company. Okay, you've been hired by a company to work, and for that work you get paid. So that is your fixed salary. So very often you might have heard of this term called basic pay. Basic pay. ये basic pay is the most important component of the fixed part of the salary. ठीक है? So that is fixed pay for you. Now, another equally important part is called as variable pay. And what is the difference between fixed and variable? Huh?
Incentives are also valuable.
Uh-huh.
Incentives that we get.
Yes, incentives and rewards are called as variable pay. Why? Because they're linked to performance. That means if you perform at a certain level, you are liable for variable pay. Whereas if you do not perform at that level, you may have to forego variable pay. Right? Now, variables ke baad, there is something called as benefits. Benefits are governed by the legal statutes of the country where the employee is operating in. So, for example, if you are looking at gratuity, you're looking at superannuation, you're looking at pensions, you are looking at any other benefit, okay, provident fund, you're looking at LTC, all of these will fall in the category of benefits, okay. So, the point that I was trying to make that severance pay is an example of a benefit. Okay. By law, companies are required to provide a certain amount as severance pay if the company folds, if there is a business cycle downturn, if there is a recession, retrenchment, whatever. Okay. But on the other hand, when you're talking of equity rights like stock options, they fall in the category of variable pay. But these are all examples of property rights. My only point here is that there are many organizations in the world, and each organization has its unique way of sharing property rights with the employees. You'll be very interested to hear, I'm assuming that you will be interested to hear, that in stock options there is something called as phantom stocks. Phantom stocks. Okay. Now, what is the meaning of phantom stocks and where is it used? Phantom stocks are used in family owned companies where you may grant stock options to a person, to an employee in spirit, but you don't allow that person to own any stocks of the company in reality. So do you understand the meaning of the word phantom is this? No. Phantom is a figurative character, right? So वही वाला चीज आप when you are getting it to stock options, meaning in spirit you are owning stocks, but in reality you don't own. So why do companies do this? Family-owned companies don't want to dilute their ownership, but at the same time they want to reward their employees. ठीक है ना? So what do? If they are granting phantom stocks to someone, he or she can participate in decision making like any owner would do, would receive dividends, would be called to shareholder, stockholder meetings, but will not own a percentage of stocks of the company. Okay. So it's a win-win situation many a times for the employee and also for the management, right? So these are all examples of property rights, and they also give you a source of culture. Okay. Culture comes from property rights, right? So now moving ahead, that apart from property rights, what do you have? You have org structure. Okay, org structure. Okay. Now, in org structure, very, very important this slide is for you. And for today's presentation also, I would want you to focus here. Org structure has a very unique link with org culture. So how do you decide what this linkage is? This linkage is basically decided on two dimensions. What are those two dimensions? The first is called focus and the second is called as environment. Okay. So focus में दो ही type के focus हैं, which is discussed. The first is internal focus, and the second is external focus. Internal focus में the company focuses more on employees and less on customers. Okay, so I'm not saying that the company does not focus on customers, but the focus is on employees first. That if I take care of my employees, I gain that commitment, I make them productive, and I gain my customers also. External focus is where you say that customer is king. Okay, that it is the customer that drives everything that this company will do. Okay, so that's the difference in perspective. That is the first. Then the second is the environment, second dimension. The environment can ask for a flexible structure, or the environment will ask for a stable structure. So supposing there is flexible structure, you have organic designs. If there are stable structures, you have mechanistic designs. This is clear or not? Have you understood this portion? Clear by now? So now let us combine these two dimensions to find out what these four quadrants are. We will first start with the adaptability culture. I don't want you to focus on the examples given in the slide. They are a little outdated. I will give you decent examples, okay? So when you're looking at adaptability culture, what is the what are the characteristics of this culture? The focus is external, that means it's on customers that you are focusing, and the design is flexible. Okay, so you have this culture called adaptability, which adapts very quickly to the signals of the environment. And what can be taken as an example? Google is a beautiful example of adaptability culture. Focus 100% external, whereas the design is geared for stability. So, as and when there is a signal from the environment, the company can creatively adapt itself. But by the way, don't think that everything is hunky dory at Google. A lot of strain on the existing organizational design because of the simple reason that the organization is expanding continuously in size and operation. So, when you keep on expanding, it is not very easy to keep the culture a structure fluid. Okay, so that is the first culture for you. Then, but every student thinks that most organizations will have adaptability culture, right? Otherwise, how do you survive in today's environment? But that's not true. Let us look at the next. That's mission culture. Mission culture की characteristics क्या है? Focus is external. Focus is 100% external. Your focus is on the customer. Okay. These are companies which run on the values of sales maximization, profit maximization, market share, all of this. And they're very, very aggressive about competing in these or under these values. Okay. So focus remains external, but design is mechanistic or stable. Design is stable. It is not as fluid as you would find in adaptability culture. Design में there is a lot of stability, and SOPs are clearly outlined to employees कि क्या आपको करना चाहिए in order to compete in the kind of markets that we are, operating in. So this is called as a mission culture. Okay. So in the Indian scene, one of the big examples of mission culture can be found with Reliance group of companies where the focus is definitely external, but the design is a lot more relatively stable than what you would find at Google. But if you want even a better example of this globally, you have this company called as Anheuser InBev. Okay, Anheuser InBev. If you put it on Google, InBev is INBEV. This is a multinational beverage making company located in Belgium, and it gives you the perfect example of the mission culture. Okay. Then from mission culture, you go down to the next, that is clan culture. Okay. Now, clan culture, why is clan? What is the meaning of a clan? Clan is called as a tribe, or, basically what it means is it means a group. It can also mean a family. Okay. Very often, tribal people say that I belong to this clan or I belong to that clan or whatever. So from there, this word has come, clan culture. So what happens here? The focus of the company is definitely internal, okay? But the design of the company is flexible, okay? Flexible. That means you have organic designs, okay? Focus internal meaning your focus is now from customers, your focus is now shifted to employees. So look at the difference in values. When you are focusing externally, your focus is or your perspective is that if you satisfy your customers, you will survive in a volatile industry, right? If your focus is internal, if then what is your perspective? Your perspective is that if you satisfy your employees, you will definitely have greater chances of survival. So, everybody is thinking of survival, but the methodology in which they do it can be different depending on the perspective. Okay. So, to give you an example of a clan culture, you have Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines, guys, I don't know whether you've heard of this company or not. This is a company that is taken as the go-to company for human resource management. Okay, globally, it is recognized as a HR leader. Okay, and Gallagher, the person who founded this company, was a visionary in many ways. So that's the reason why in management schools, this company is taken as an example for so many strategic moves. Okay. So if you are trying to understand the whole strategy of the low cost, no frills airline, that means remove every frill from travel and reduce the cost of the ticket, give the consumer a chance to fly and value low. So that whole concept had come from Southwest. So, they reduced the runtime, reduced the frills, made the air travel cheaper, and people were able to fly. In the United States, people don't fly very often. Okay. I mean, जैसे हम लोग यहाँ पे करते हैं, they don't do that. This was a US based company, is a US based company. So why Southwest is taken as an example? Because everyone knows the reality of the airline industry. One of the most dynamic, one of the most volatile. See what is happening in India, right? Always lockouts, strikes, change in ownership. So many things happen here. And airline industry is greatly affected by the larger changes in the environment. So if there is a problem in Ukraine, that crisis can impact the airline industry. Yeah. Because the cost of raw material may increase, the sources of supply may deplete. So many things can happen. In that kind of a industry, to maintain a culture like a clan culture is definitely an example. So that's the example of Southwest. Now, the last is called as the bureaucratic culture, not something that is found in many companies today. What do you find here? The focus is internal, but the design is stable. Okay. That means you have a mechanistic design here, and that's the reason why this word bureaucratic is used. But यहाँ का जो internal focus है in the bureaucratic culture and the internal focus in the clan culture, there is a difference. In the clan culture, the employee is valued. The employee initiative is also valued, and employees are asked to take initiative to be more creative and to be more committed to their companies. But in bureaucratic culture, what is the focus? The focus is on conformity and obedience. So if you are an employee of the company, you should largely learn to obey to the values of the company. Okay. So ये difference आप find कर सकते हैं. And in bureaucratic culture, I think one example that can be given is of this company called Kraft Foods. Kraft Foods. Okay. Not a very successful, culture management, but Kraft Foods, had definitely a bureaucratic culture. Okay. And to demolish the bureaucratic culture, they created a bureaucratic structure. That means more hierarchical levels in the management. So understand that if you have a particular way of thinking, it is not easy to change that way in which you think. Okay. So have you understood adaptability, mission, plan, and bureaucratic? These are the four different cultural types which evolve depending on the focus and the structural dimension of the company. Okay. Now moving ahead to the last source, which is also equally important because that is ethics. So what is the meaning of ethics? Ethics are the moral values and beliefs and rules that tell organizational stakeholders how to deal with members internally and externally. Now, ethics as you know, gives rise to something called as social responsibility, right? So social responsibility में कितने approaches है? You can rate these approaches on a continuum, okay, relative continuum from low to high, ठीक है? And before I get into these approaches, I will only make two distinctions. I hope you remember those distinctions. One is called as legal, and the other is called as moral. ये दोनों हमेशा एक नहीं होते हैं, okay? Right? Many a times you are within the boundaries of law, but then you may not be morally right, okay? Legally you are right, but morally you may not be right. Now, let's start with the first, that is the obstructionist approach. Obstructionist approach is unethical, meaning you are not legally right, legal भी नहीं है, moral भी नहीं है, okay? So the use of pesticides by the cola majors, right? Coke and Pepsi at one point in time were heavily criticized for the suspected use of pesticides. Okay. So this was, and if it has happened, probably did happen because a lot of research stated that yes, pesticides were being utilized by these beverage making companies. So in those cases, the company is also illegal and the company is also immoral if that is true. Okay, cola majors can include many more companies as well, but if this was true and not a myth, then that is called as obstructionist approach. Then would come the defensive approach. Okay, slightly better. What is this slightly better? That means legally you may be right, but morally, no. Okay. Do you understand how companies can do that? I think, I don't know whether I've given you the example of Pentasoft and their Black Friday concept, but I'm repeating it again. That, many companies, you'll also see that on your own employment contract, that during the time of probation, the company can remove you without any notice. ठीक है? मतलब तुम अगर प्रोबेशन के टाइम में तुम निकल जाओगे without any notice, many times you'll have to pay back, or there are certain clauses that you'll have to meet before you leave. But company is not bound otherwise. Company can ask you to leave because you're still not a regular employee of the company, right? Now, Pentasoft during the software crash, okay, that was the year 2001 and 2002, very difficult time for the software industry. Worldwide crash हो गया, ठीक है? They had a concept of Black Friday where they would remove employees on the evening of Friday. That means you work for the whole week, you get paid for it, but you don't get to come back on Monday morning, okay? So जिन employees के नाम were published on the bulletin board, they don't get to come back on Monday morning. So legally, the company was within the boundaries of law. The question is morally, how right was it? Okay, because as I told you, retrenchment, downsizing, layoffs, once again, there is a perspective. Companies can do it in many different ways. Boeing, at one point in time, downsized 40,000 employees, but 40,000 employees were downsized over a period of 5 years. Okay, and Boeing had outplacement services also where it helped those employees get placed otherwise. So, how you do something also tells a lot about the values of the company. Then from defensive, you come to accommodative. Accommodative is legally you are right, morally also you are right. That means the moral quotient is now important for companies. So wherever companies have a strong CSR department, then in that case, they follow the accommodative approach. Now, accommodative say proactive. Proactive, the focus is always moral. Moral is a very subjective term. Legal is not a very subjective term. So wherever companies are morally conscious, they are not, legality is secondary to them. Morally, they are conscious. They are considered to be some of the most ethical companies of the world. And the best example of this is Johnson & Johnson, particularly its activities during the Tylenol crisis. Okay. So these are social responsibility approaches which tell you also that how organization ethics can play a role in shaping of culture in organizations. Now, going from the idea of ethics, what factors can promote organization culture? There are some factors, they are put in red. The first is value-based leadership. That means every leader is in sync with the values of the organization. If employees don't find a sync there, then they will also not follow the values of the organization. Then the formal structure. Formal structure may you have adaptability, you have plan, you have mission, and you have bureaucratic cultures. Now, I don't want to talk about these two. Everyone understands what code of ethics and training programs are, but I want to talk about this. Are you aware of this disclosure mechanisms? What are they? In disclosure mechanisms, there is a concept called as whistleblowing. Heard of this?
Yes.
Huh? What is the meaning of whistleblowing? Huh?
Yes.
Ma'am, disclose the internal issue into the public
Into the public. Now,
by
normally
the
by the employees. That's the reason why they're called as whistleblowers. So if as an employee you notice that your company is engaging in fraudulent activities, do you have a moral responsibility to report it? Answer is yes. But who do you report it is what the disclosure mechanisms talk about. So whistleblowing is a very important concept in organizations, but the question is what happens to the person who blows the whistle? When someone blows the whistle, that person is not treated kindly either by the organization for which he or she is working or either by other organizations worldwide. Uske kya rights hai? What is the security provided to that person? Okay. Now, disclosure mechanisms became very important in after 2001. 2001 was called as a year of corporate frauds because some of the biggest companies in the world went bankrupt. And the reason for bankruptcy was nothing other than corporate fraud. And people understood that, because disclosure mechanisms were not there in place and whistleblowers had no sense of security or protection, even if employees knew, they were quiet about it. Okay. So आज भी लोग यही सोचते हैं ना कि हमें क्या लेना देना है. Either if it's too much for me, I will seek another job, but I'm not certainly going to go and complain or blow the whistle because I will get nothing out of it. Right. So disclosure mechanisms, if they are strong in an organization, then they talk of transparency and they talk of employee commitment, not employee ka commitment to the organization, organizational commitment to the employee. Today, for example, okay, in the age of diversity, it's very nice to say in theory, that we are a diverse organization. We represent all the members of the workforce. But representation is not enough. You have to take care of the rights of the members who are there in your company. So, for example, the POSH laws are talked about today as they are not talked about, as they were never talked about ever before. You're aware of POSH, right? What does POSH stand for? My goodness, this is not acceptable. Yes, everyone should know this. It's prevention of sexual harassment, okay? And this is a big, big word, okay? Now, this can also take the form of physical and verbal harassment. Both forms can be discussed under POSH, and POSH is a very stringent, umbrella of laws which not only takes care of a woman, but also takes care of a man, takes care of basically anyone in and at work, okay? But tell me one thing. POSH is a wonderful practice, okay? But when the company is not very high on disclosure mechanisms, so many people have suffered from these kind of harassments. How many have reported? Is the question. So disclosure mechanisms also talk about the values that a company stands for. And here I'll also talk about something else. Why whistleblowing is so important today. Have you heard of this? There's something called as the mom effect. Mom, what is the meaning of mom does not mean mother. Mom means silent. You are mom, you are looking at something that is wrong, but you are not reporting it. You're not even protesting it. That's called as the mom effect in organizations. So if your values of transparency are very poor, then mom effect in organizations is very, very high. Okay. So these can be some factors that promote organization culture. Okay. Now moving on from The promotion, we go into the last area, which is change in culture. Cultures are not meant to stay forever. Cultures are also meant to change. But there should be some compelling factors, some forceful factors that will bring about this change. And what are they? The first is called as a dramatic crisis. Dramatic crisis meaning the organization's very survival is in question. So if it does not adapt, if it does not change, then it will fold under. So to give you examples, Xerox and Continental Airlines. These are celebrated examples of companies changing their culture to turn around. Then comes leadership turnover. Every leader brings his or her own flavor to the company. Okay, so whether it is Steve Jobs, whether it's Tim Cook, whether it is X, whether it is Y, they will. If a company sees a change in leader, there will be a change in values. Okay. Now the third is life cycle stage. Okay, what is the meaning of life cycle stage? There are three parts, right? Growth, maturity, and decline. Where will you see the maximum evidence of culture change? In which phase?
Decline. Growth.
Maturity.
Growth and decline. Growth may maximum, okay, because there is a lot of experimentation that is going on in the organization. Decline may, there are two parts. Three things which can happen to a company. The first is change. The second is adapt. And the third is disappear. Okay. So when we talking of Xerox and Continental, they changed and they adapted. But when we talk about companies like Kodak, you disappear. So decline may, if there is no change in culture, you understand that the company is not going to survive for a longer period in time. Then comes the age of the organization. If the age of the organization is young, the change in culture is faster. If the age of the organization is old, then the change in culture is slower. That, and in this sense, organizations and individuals are almost the same. Okay. Then would come size of the organization. If the size of the organization is small, change is fast. If the size of the organization is big, change is slow. Then strength of the current culture and absence of subcultures. If the current culture is very strong, like you found in the case of Body Shop, then question of culture change does not even arise. It is a very, very strong culture, very difficult to change that identity. Subcultures, on the other hand, derive the identity from the dominant culture. तो subcultures अगर है तो change मुश्किल है. Subcultures नहीं है तो change becomes easier. Clear or not? All the situational factors. Are you clear with it?
Ma'am, could you explain it more? Last to one. Last to one. Like strength of the current culture or absence of subculture.
Of subcultures. Okay. Strength of the current culture. देखो, अगर current culture ही weak है, current culture ही dysfunctional है, then people will like to change that culture. That change is possible. But if the current culture is strong and if the current culture is functional, then very difficult for the organization to change it. Subcultures का मतलब क्या है? Subcultures are mini identities within the dominant culture. And subcultures derive their identity from the dominant culture. So if there are subcultures, then dominant culture change is difficult. Okay? Because अगर dominant culture change हो जाएगा, subculture भी change होगा, right? So if there are subcultures, dominant culture change will be difficult. But जहाँ पे subculture है नहीं, more or less it's a uniform organization, change is easier. Okay? Understood or not?
Yes, ma'am. Understood.
Now here is where I will stop